Well, I finally got the shirt. And, when both your teams are giving you heart attacks, man, it was a stressful weekend for me to say the least. But hey, aside from the Falcons, BYU is 5-0. Hopefully we can keep it going. Well, we have a bye next week, so no need to worry about that right now. But our worries will have to wait until 2 weeks from now. No, so great. Anyways, guys, welcome to Week 5 college football reactions, along with reaction to the Week 6 AP poll for yesterday that came out yesterday afternoon. Anyways, man, episode 11. We are into a new set of 10 episodes. Episode 10 was just on Wednesday. If you haven't watched that, the rest of the playlist, link will be in the description, and you could also look for the pinned comment as well. I will post that there as well. But if you have enjoyed this series, if you want me to more, be sure to leave a like, hit the red subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss a video. I said like button twice. What the hell? Anyways, hit the bell so you don't miss a video. Anyways, let's get straight into it. Week 5 college football reactions with the Week 6 AP poll. Kicking things off, we had the college game day for Saturday. We had an SEC top 5 team classic with Georgia traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama started out strong, and they were able to hang on despite a late Georgia rally, 41-34. Georgia had an abysmal first half, but then the second half, they wanted to start playing football. Like, it was already too late. You dug yourself in a hole that you couldn't get out of, and it cost you in the end. Your 42-game regular season winning streak was on the line, and you did not deliver. We're taking a look at the total yardage. Like, everybody can move the ball. Like, there was barely any defense unless you were Georgia. 3 interceptions and 1 fumble loss for 4 turnovers that was forced by the Alabama defense. Man, they were cooking in the first half. They did let off some steam in the second half, but they were able to hang on anyway. Great job by both of these teams moving the ball. Georgia just stuck themselves in a hole that they just could not get themselves out of. They couldn't recover from that haymaker they received. As for quarterback play, Jalen Milroe had 374, 2 touchdowns and a pick on 27-33. Carson Beck threw 50 times and had 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, and 430 yards. Man, besides the turnovers, these 2 quarterbacks combined had like 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. What a QB battle. For Georgia's offense, ETN had one of the rushing touchdowns with 55 rushing yards on 4.6 yards to carry. Dylan Bell also had the rushing touchdown. And he even had 5 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown on the receiving end. The other receiving touchdowns were by Lawson Lucky with 2 catches, 22 and a touchdown. And Arian Smith with 6 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown. There was also Dominic Levet having a way better game with 6 catches, 59 yards, and Colby Young with 3 catches for 57. As for Alabama, Jalen Milroe added 2 rushing touchdowns along with his 2 touchdown passes. And he had 117 yards on 7.3 yards per carry. He could be a Heisman frontrunner for this week. And he was basically the entire rushing offense because Ryan Williams was an absolute dog in this game. He had the game-winning touchdown with 6 catches, 177 yards to add to that to survive a late Georgia rally. Man, this was a battle for the ages, I will say. Battle at the decade candidate, probably. And defensively, Georgia had no sacks whatsoever, but Dan Jackson had an interception. There was a few pass deflections, specifically 3. Jackson had a very solid game. Malachi Starks had a solid game with 2 tackles for loss. C.J. Allen and David Everett had some solid games. So did K.J. Bolden and Smail Monton, who had a half a tackle for loss. It was just a great game for Georgia's defense, except for the fact they could not tackle Jalen Milroe in the backfield. Alabama's offensive line is still good. SEC offensive line is just completely overmatching every single conference's offensive line. I will say that. And as for Bama's defense, 3 interceptions by Jahad Campbell, Xavier Brown, and Dominique Jackson, not Malachi Moore. He had a solid game, though. And Deontay Lawson had 2 tackles for loss, 10 tackles, and a sack. Quay Russaw also had a sack. There was also 2 forced fumbles in the game. There was a defender named Devontae Smith. That's actually so funny. Fumble recovery was by Jamarian Latham. This was just a great game defensively for Alabama. They just let off the gas pedal a little bit too soon, but they were able to still hang on to beat Georgia. And I feel like they are going to be the number 1 team in the country after this with the best win in the entire NCAA. Next up, we had the big noon kickoff game between 2 unranked teams in Colorado and UCF in the Bounce House in Orlando. So safe to say, nobody expected this result. Yeah, not even close. The final score was Colorado absolutely decimating UCF in a big road win, 48-21. Damn. Just like the Georgia-Alabama game, the offenses actually performed pretty solidly. They were even for most of the game. It's just the turnover battle was heavily won by Colorado. Good Lord. This was just a great defensive game for Colorado as far as turnovers go, because the yardage, very even across the board, so it was actually a good game. As far as passing goes, Shedeur Sanders with 28 of 35 for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick, and KJ Jefferson for UCF had 20 of 35 for 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Not terrible at all for both of these quarterbacks. They did pretty good. For Colorado's offense, rushing-wise, they had 2 rushing touchdowns, not too many yards, like Isaiah Augustave with 9.8 yards per carry, then Micah Welch and Dallin Hayden having rushing touchdowns. Travis Hunter proving again why he is a Heisman candidate, my man from Collins Hill High School. 9 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. Will Shepard had a really good game as well with 4 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown. And LaJohntay Wester, you know, the guy who single-handedly caught the touchdown last week against Baylor. Yeah, he had 3 catches, 34 yards, and another touchdown. And for UCF, KJ Jefferson also added a rushing touchdown along with 76 yards. Archie Harvey had a solid game, but he also had he had a really good game. Solid game on the ground, but receiving was where it was at with 4 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. And the only other touchdown was Xavier Townsend with 4 catches and 50 yards and a touchdown. Don't forget, Trent Whitmore had a 54-yard reception in this game. Both offenses played well. Going to Colorado's defense, we had 2 interceptions by Preston Hodge and Travis Hunter himself, playing on both sides of the ball. And there was also a fumble recovery for a touchdown. There were 2 fumble recoveries altogether, forced by Jalen Wester and Shane Cokes. Recovered by DJ McKinney, and the touchdown for fumble for 95 yards was recovered by Cameron Silman Craig for a fumble recovery touchdown. And there was also a plentiful of sacks. Taji McCoy had 2, Samuel Okalola had a sack, Nikhil Green had a sack, and Amari McNeil had a sack. Very solid game from Colorado's defense. Man, they played extremely well. The offenses played well to move the ball, but Colorado was able to force the turnovers to get a very big blowout win on the road. And I'm not saying that UCS defense wasn't bad at all either. Nigel Kelly had a sack, Malachi Lawrence had a sack. There was also Deshaun Pace with an interception, 2 passes defensed. Ethan Barr, Latarius Tennyson, Mac Williams, each had some very good games tackling the ball carriers. It was just a tale of which defense would come out to play, and Colorado's defense made sure of that. Both offenses played well. It's just which defense was going to come out and make some big plays to help their team win. It ended up being Colorado. Great job, guys. Coach Prime, very sorry I doubted you. Had to get the shirt because we had a very close road win over Baylor. BYU comes into Waco and beats the Baylor Bears and escapes that stadium 34-28 in a very close game at the second half. For us, it was literally just a tale of 2 halves. The first half, our offense played really well, and then our second half, our offense was just non-existent. There was no life in our offense in the second half. Our defense had to bail us out again. And another game where the yardage was just completely even. They dominated us in passing, and then we beat them in the rushing game. But man, 2 turnovers. This game was just even down the stretch. It was just which team was going to make the clutch play at the last point of the game. It ended up being BYU, thankfully, and we're still 5-0. Passing wise, like shit writes off. I don't know what to say here. 17-31, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Like, he is mid at best. Let me just say, we don't have a good quarterback. Jake Redlove is mid at best. Even Parker Kingston tried to throw a pass, but that didn't go too much. And Sawyer Robertson, let me just say, Sawyer Robertson played better than Jake Redlove, and we still won. 27-48 for 324 yards and 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. He even had a rushing touchdown as well. As for BYU's offense, Jake Retzloff even had a rushing touchdown in this game, so he didn't do that bad, but I think he's just mid at best. And Chase Roberts even had a 2-yard rushing touchdown. He led the team in rushing with 53 yards, Jake Retzloff did, and Enoch Nawakine even had 51 rushing yards. The 2 passing touchdowns, man, the main guy, Miles Davis had a 26-yard touchdown. That was the first touchdown of the game. And Darius Lassiter was the main guy in our receiving corps with 8 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Why hasn't he been getting these stats all season long, like up to this point? Like Jake Retzloff, is he just being double covered or something? Probably, but he needs to get more touches, and he's going to make big plays. No matter how many times you throw him the ball, he's going to be there to catch the football every time. As I said before, Sawyer Robertson got the only rushing touchdown. We were able to contain their rushing offense for the most part. Both of Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington had 2.4 yards per carry. If I'm not mistaken, I think their running backs, along with ours, are hurt. And they were in this game. But man, the receiving core was just unbelievable. Bryson Washington had a heck of an acrobatic catch from what I saw in the highlights. 6 catches for 37 yards. But then the receiving core of these 3 guys, Hal Presley, Josh Cameron, and Ashton Hawkins, holy cow, man. They combined for about 280 yards and 20 catches with 3 touchdowns combined between the 3 guys. That is insane numbers for all 3 of those guys. Like, give them like 1 or 2 years and they could be right back into contending for a Big 12 title again. Defensively, I believe we had 3 sacks in this game. John Tomapau. We had Isaiah Glasker had a tackle for loss on 4th and 1 from what I saw. He made a great play. There was 6 passes defensed. There were 2 interceptions on the game by Blake Mankelson and Crew Wakely. Crew Wakely, I believe, got the game-ending interception that sealed the game for us. He even got a sack along with Tyler Batty, who is supposed to be I forget what that award is called, but he's like on an award watch of some sort, and I can see why. He's been doing very well for us recently as a senior. This is his last year, so I'm hoping he has a great season. Like, our defense played well. Like, at the second half, we kind of struggled a little bit, but at the end, we were able to force enough turnovers to give us the win. So, no complaints about our defense. Our offense needs to get better, though. Baylor's defense came out to play as well with 2 picks. Ilinus Noel the third, I don't know how to say his first name, but that was a big man interception, and he allowed it off to one of his teammates. That was a really cool play to see. Then Corey Gordon got the other pick on an overthrow by Retzloff. There were 4 passes defensed. I don't think they got to the court. No, they did not get to a quarterback a single time. But Keaton Thomas was a really good player in this game. So was Trevin Maye. Devin Bobby had a solid game. So did Matt Jones and Tevin Williams. Both these defenses came to play. Just BYU was just able to escape Waco with their good defensive play and their strong starting first half. We had 3 top 25 matchups that weren't on College game day. Starting off, we have a Big 12 matchup between the Oklahoma State Cowboys and the Kansas State Wildcats in Manhattan. You can see the rankings at the bottom. Let me just say, Kansas State was for real, and we beat them by 30 just the week before. I mean, the yardage combined for over 1,000 yards. Like, both teams played well, but Kansas State had 300 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. the entire game. My goodness, Oklahoma State could not stop the run for anything. And 3 turnovers does not help you guys at all. Alabama struggled this game, even though he had threw 50 times, completed 26, 364 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. It's just not going to be Kansas State at all. Avery Johnson even had 19 of 31 for 260 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Solid game from him. As for Oklahoma State's rushing and receiving game, Trent Helen got the only touchdown. Ollie Gordon, like 5.1 yards to carry. It's not bad, but it's not like Heisman level running game. Like Ashton Genty, I think that's his name, Ashton Genty, he's having a better season than Ollie Gordon is. I know, because he's playing in the Mountain West. Ollie Gordon's in the Big 12, but still, that's just unbelievable. And then Dejon Stribling, I believe his name is, he had the only receiving touchdown in the game with 7 catches, 157 yards. Jesus. And then Brandon Presley and Rashad Owens having 6 for 70 and 4 catches for 53 yards respectively. Oh yeah, and I completely forgot, Avery Johnson also added 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, 60 yards on 5 carries. DJ Giddens completely decimated the Oklahoma State defense with 12.5 yards a carry. Good lord. 187 yards and a touchdown. Jeez. And then Chase Brown having 4 catches, 78 yards and a touchdown. Shane Jackson with 5 for 55. And Keegan Johnson with 4 catches for 52 yards. With Garrett Oakley and Will Anshaw getting touchdown receptions as well. No sacks for Oklahoma State's defense, but they did get an interception from Corey Black, and Trey Rucker, Nicholas Martin, and Kendall Daniels also had a very solid game for themselves. Defense just could not stop the run. Like, is Kansas State's offensive line just a brick wall? Oh wait, they were the entire game. And as for Kansas State's defense, they got 2 interceptions with Jacob Parrish and Marquez Siegel with 4 passes defensed. And Colby McAllister even getting a fumble recovery. Austin Romaine, Jordan Riley Scott, and Keenan Garber even had some very solid games for them. No sacks for either team. It was just Kansas State was just able to run and pound the Oklahoma State defense. They were just very well balanced. They dominated Oklahoma State's defense, and Oklahoma State could not do a thing about it. Up next, we had Louisville Cardinals traveling to South Bend to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, with Notre Dame pulling out a win with 31-24 victory. Wow. I didn't really watch this game very much because I'm not sure. I tried to stay away from the NCAA football until Georgia-Alabama came on because that was like the game that everybody wanted to see. But heard this game was just Notre Dame dominating the first quarter, and then Louisville kind of making a late rally, but Notre Dame was able to hold them off. Offensively, Louisville could move the ball. It was just the 3 turnovers. Like, losing the turnover battle was just the main key in Notre Dame being able to beat the Cardinals at home. It's not to say that Tyler Shaw didn't play terrible. Like, he had 24-41 for 264 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Man, like, he did really good in this game. Riley Leonard finally broke out and put up 17-23 for 163 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. He's looking way better already. Can he keep it going, though? That is going to be the question that Notre Dame will have to answer. Rushing game wasn't that bad. I mean, Isaac Brown had 72 rushing yards of 5.5 yards a carry. Tyler Shaw even has 7.2 yards a carry. And then 5 catches for 71 yards for Colin Lacey. And Shakori Brooks even had 2 touchdowns in this game, with Isaac Brown even having a receiving touchdown adding to that. Oh yeah, and Riley Leonard even had a rushing touchdown, with Jeremiah Love also getting 34 rushing yards and a touchdown. Riley Leonard led the rushing game with 52. And Jeremiah Love even had a receiving touchdown, 5 catches for 27 yards. And the only real main other receiving core names you need to know is Jaden Harrison with his 34-yard catch, and Jada Greathouse with 4 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown from this game. As for Louisville's defense, they were able to get to the quarterback once with TJ Quinn. They did force 2 fumbles for Louisville's defense, and Mary McDonald recovered both of them, with Stanquan Clark and TJ Capers forcing fumbles. Antonio Watts even had a good game as well. Well, like Stanquan Clark, TJ Quinn, Antonio Watts, Tamari McDonald, and TJ Capers had some solid games. It just wasn't enough to really come back from the deficit they had against the Irish. As for Notre Dame's defense, man, what a load of pass deflections. They had 9 on the day. Leonard Moore, Drake Bowen had forced fumbles. Jaden Osbury and Kenny Urlacher had fumble recoveries. And Xavier Watts even had an interception with 3 sacks on the game for Notre Dame's defense. From Jalen Steed, Kingston Filiamuasa with a half a sack for Riley Mills and Junior Tuihalamaka. I hope I said that right. Defense really played well. It really was the difference in this game, forcing 3 turnovers on Louisville's offense and getting a lot of passes defense, which really helped them out in the victory, with Riley Leonard looking a lot better than he did in past weeks. And then we had number 19 Illinois traveling to Happy Valley to play number 9 Penn State. Penn State coming out on top in a very big stew fest of a game, 21-7. Man, this was bad. It was a good run, Illinois, but unfortunately, in Big Ten play, Penn State was really mad about 2021 when you guys beat them in their own house. I think it was in their own house? I believe so. It was like a 9 overtime game that was like only 2-point conversions. Illinois ended up coming out in the top 3 years ago to beat a top 10 Penn State team that completely struggled. I mean, of course, Penn State was able to dominate the game on the rushing game, and passing was just a whole different story. Like, what in the world happened to Drew Allers? Like, his powers got zipped away from him. Luckily, the defense forced 2 turnovers, so that's great news for Penn State. But on the day, Luke Altmaier had a decent game, 16-25 for 185 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Like, not terrible, but not great. Not good enough to beat Penn State there. And then Drew Aller only threw 21 times in this game, completed 15, which is good. Played efficient football, 135 yards, no touchdowns though, even though there is no picks. But I'm not sure what happened to Drew Aller in this game. Like, his powers got zapped from him or something. The only highlight of the rushing game was Caden Fegan getting 4.9 yards a carry for 64 rushing yards. The only touchdown was from Carson Goda. And the receiving game was highlighted by Zachary Franklin, Hank Beatty, Pat Bryant, and Josh McRae. Wow. Like, this was just lackluster at best. And now I know why Drew Aller didn't throw so much, because the rushing game was just reigning king in this game for Penn State. Like, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen combined for 34 carries, almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, with Tyler Warren even having himself a touchdown. Obviously, no touchdowns, no picks for Drew Aller. And the receiving game was highlighted by Tyler Warren and Harrison Wallace, combining for 7 catches and 72 yards. Yeah, the passing games were lackluster, but Penn State's run game really helped the Nittany Lions out in this game. Illinois' defense was able to get 2 sacks on Drew Aller with Gabe Jackus. I don't know how to say that name. Jackus, I don't know. He got a sack. Seth Coleman and Tat Farrell ended up combining for half a sack. Other guys who had some good games were Dylan Rosiak, Miles Scott, Ryan Mead, and Matthew Bailey. Like, defense didn't do terrible, but they just were not able to stop the rushing game because Penn State's offensive line was just intimidating as hell. But boy, Illinois' offense had a tough time against this pass rush. I mean, I believe that is 7 sacks for that defense, with the dual Carter getting 2 sacks and 4 tackles for a loss. Man, what a game from him. A.J. Harris even had an interception. 3 passes were defensed. Abdul Carter even forced a fumble. It was probably a strip sack. And Smith Filbert had a fumble recovery on that play to force another turnover. Like, Penn State's defense and rushing game really helped them out this week. Sorry, Illinois. It happens to everybody. And believe it or not, we had 2 ranked versus unranked upsets this week. And this is one of them. Kentucky traveling to Oxford, Mississippi with the Wildcats upsetting the Ole Miss Rebels, who were ranked 6th in the country at one time, 20-17, after Ole Miss missed a field goal at the end to force overtime. Boy. You thought Kentucky wasn't competitive? I mean, they brought Georgia to a 1-point game at the end of the entire 60 minutes. Like, you thought Kentucky wasn't that competitive. Oh, they were competitive against Georgia. It was only a matter of time until they met Ole Miss and completely beat them. I may sound delusional when I say this, but I think that Kentucky team that played Georgia would have beaten Alabama, even though they had a bye week. Like, if Bama scheduled a game with Kentucky last week, Kentucky would have 100% beaten them. Like, 100%. I may sound delusional, but I think that's true. Offensively, like, yardage-wise, it's pretty good. Like, they were both even on every aspect. The fumble did kind of play a role in there, but the field goals were just, man, like, field goals were even until the missed field goal by Ole Miss that ended up sealing an upset bid by Kentucky. Brock Vandagriff didn't have a terrible game. Like, he played efficiently. Like, both quarterbacks played efficiently. 18-28 for Vandagriff with 243 yards and a touchdown, with Jackson Dart having 18-27, 261, and a touchdown pass as well. No interceptions for any of those quarterbacks. I mean, Kentucky's rushing offense was a little bit lackluster. Like, the only real guy to talk about was Demi Sumo with 11 carries, 47 yards on 4.3 yards a carry. The main receivers on here was Dane Key and Barry Brown, combining with 13 catches, 193 yards, almost 200 yards receiving between the two. And Dane Key even having the only touchdown on offense for Kentucky. Ole Miss's rush game was just a little bit better, with Henry Parrish even having 62 yards and a rushing touchdown. And the receiving game was highlighted by Trey Harris, 11 catches, 176 yards and a touchdown, single-handedly carrying the receiving core of Ole Miss. It just wasn't enough to beat the Wildcats. Trey Harris's performance was all for nothing because Kentucky's defense got to the quarterback 4 total times, even with Octavius Oxendine with 2 sacks. Man, that boy would be proud with that first name, Octavius. Forced fumble by J.Q. Hardaway, recovered by Noah Matthews. 2 passes defensed. J.Q. Hardaway had a very impressive game, along with Jamin Dumas-Johnson and Derek Jackson. Very nice stuff from Kentucky's defense. But somehow Ole Miss's defense was just a little better. Like, they had 5 sacks on the game. T.J. Dudley had a really good game. Chris Paul had 8 tackles and a tackle for loss. 2 sacks for Sunter, I don't know how to say his name, but Perkins. I'm not a Kentucky fan, so I'm not exactly sure how to say that name. Princely Umamilan with 3 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. 3 pass deflections from Trey Amos. Jaden Candy with 2 pass deflections. And Trey Washington with a pass deflection and a forced fumble and a half a tackle for loss, 7 tackles. Really solid game from Ole Miss. Like, offensively, they played efficient football except for the fumble. Like, defense played well. The kicker just missed a field goal that would have went to overtime. If Ole Miss went to overtime with Kentucky, Ole Miss would have 100% won that game. And finally, we have Arizona Wildcats traveling to Utah. They were not number 20. That's a little glitch. They were unranked. They played against a top 10 Utah team and came into Rice Nichols and stunned the Ute fans 23-10. I would laugh at Utes fans right now, but don't worry, Utah. We're going to be losing to Arizona in 2 weeks. I am very hopeful that we, along with Utah, win out and hopefully get the Holy War on College game day, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. No way. We got a tough stretch of games before we play Utah. We got Arizona, Oklahoma State, and UCF in the bounce house. Just like Colorado came in there and just completely dismantled them on the road. But Utah, I saw you had 4 fourth down conversion attempts, and you failed every single one of them. Was Arizona's defense just that good, apparently? I guess so. Ison Wilson did not play too well, having 2 interceptions on the game. Yardage-wise was pretty even, with Utah beating Arizona in passing, Arizona beating Utah in rushing. So it turned out to be very even in terms of total yardage. First downs were pretty much even. Just the 4 missed fourth down conversions and the 2 interceptions. He's combined for 6 turnovers, including the ones on downs. Yeah, Utah just played a sloppy game all game. Noah Fafita had a solid game, nothing too crazy. 19 of 31 for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. With Isaac Wilson, 20 of 40, 280 yards, but a touchdown and 2 picks. That is concerning. For Arizona, 72 rushing yards and 73 rushing yards for Quali Conley and Kedrick Riscano, but Datora McMillan having 6 catches for 50 yards, that was a little surprising to me. And then the 2 touchdowns on the receiving end were by Jeremiah Patterson and Kean Burnett with 5 catches, 76 yards and a touchdown. But don't forget, Devin Hyatt had a 41-yard reception in this game as well. And the common denominator for the rushing game was Michael Bernard for Utah with 5.7 yards a carry and 91 rushing yards. And then the dominator of the game was Dorian Singer with 9 catches, 155 yards. Brand Queeth even had 5 catches, 53 yards. The only touchdown was by Kevin Lohner with a 20-yard receiving touchdown. Defensively, not too many players were involved. They got to the quarterback 3 times. 2 picks by Genesis Smith and Gunnar Maldonado. I hope I said that right. 7 pass deflections between 2 players, Takario Davis and Emmanuel Cardinley. Talia Brown had a really good game. So did Dalton Johnson, Shikamanu. Man, this was just a very solid defensive game for Arizona. They were able to get some 4th down stops, 4 of them to be specific. That's incredible for Arizona. And it goes to show you that coaching is not perfect at all in the slightest. 2 pass deflections for Utah's defense. They didn't get to Noah Fafita 1 time. 2 tackles for loss with both Jonathan Hull and Alakai Gilman. Teal Johnson even had an interception. He had a solid game. So did Lander Barton and Sione Fotu. But, man, the offense struggled at times. Isaac Wilson did not have a great game in the slightest. And Arizona's defense made him pay. And, of course, we have to go into Week 6 AP Top 25 poll that came out yesterday afternoon. So let's get straight to it. Obviously, Alabama with the best win in the country, beating Georgia when people still thought Georgia was dominant. They take the number 1 spot over Texas. I understand Texas did struggle with Mississippi State for 3 quarters. Alabama struggled with South Florida for 3 quarters. Ohio State, I'm fine with them being at 3. I don't exactly like Tennessee being ahead of Georgia. I would much rather have Georgia being 4, Tennessee being 5, but Tennessee's undefeated, and they have 2 ranked wins, even though NC State's not in there anymore. So that's fine. Oregon at 6, that's totally fine. They're finally playing some effective football. They played Oregon State. They played UCLA. They actually felt comfortable about that game. Penn State at 7, Miami at 8, Missouri at 9, 10 at Michigan. Michigan should be a little bit higher, don't you think? I understand there's 1 loss for Michigan, and they struggled in just about every single game they played. They struggled with Minnesota of all teams, and they also struggled with Arkansas State. What? And of course, USC is at 11, because Michigan beat USC. Ole Miss drops to 12. That's actually quite funny. LSU being at 13. They have 1 loss, but seriously, what have they done? Seriously. Notre Dame at 14, they finally got a much-needed ranked win. That's their 2nd of the season so far, I'm very sure, because they beat Texas A&M and then they beat Louisville. Clemson at 15, I'm actually fine with. Clemson has really outdone themselves after the beating they took from the Bulldogs. Seeing Iowa State and BYU at 16 and 17 is crazy. They both started the season as unranked teams in the preseason polls, but then they have made their way up. They're both unbeaten as of right now. Utah at 18, I understand. Yeah, I'm not sure if you would really exactly put us at 17 ahead of them, but Utah did lose to Arizona, so I'm not complaining. Oklahoma at 19, I guess. Yes, Kansas State at 20. Kansas State does have 2 loss. Or no, they have 1 loss. I think they should be ahead of Oklahoma because Kansas State beat 2 ranked teams at the time. Arizona was ranked at the time. Arizona's getting close to being ranked. Oklahoma has really not really played anybody. Red River Shootout is coming up, but I don't know if Oklahoma can hang with Texas. That remains to be seen. But I think Kansas State and Oklahoma should switch. And at the bottom, we have Boise State at 21. I think they're a slight bit too high for my liking. I think UNLV should be a little bit ahead because UNLV is undefeated. Boise State has 1 loss. I think that was against the Power 5 team, if I'm not mistaken. Louisville drops to 22? Okay, I'm not sure what to think of that. And then seeing Indiana in a ranking is just so odd to me, but I feel like it just deserved. I'm sorry. Why did I say deserved? What? Anyways, Indiana is undefeated. They are 5-0. Like, I'm proud of Indiana for making it this far. Illinois only drops to 24. I mean, I understand. Nice job for holding Penn State to 21 points, even though you didn't quite get the win that you were looking for. And UNLV is at 25, which I think UNLV and Boise State could compete for a Mountain West title and even the group of 5 bid in the playoff. Crazy stuff. Well, anyways, that is going to do it for this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. Again, if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss a video. There's a big red subscribe button down there. Just click it. Like, it's down there somewhere. Just go find it and click it. Anyways, until next time, this will be week 4 NFL reactions on the next episode. And until then, I'll see you next time. Peace.